I remember the moment I realized the cure was gathering dust. The dim glow of my lab's fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the bench, and the hum of the fume hood sounded like a lullaby for lost possibilities. My name is Dr. Natalia Carter, and this lab, once my sanctuary, now feels like a tomb. I used to take comfort in the scent of isopropyl alcohol, the orderly rows of pipettes, the steady tick of the PCR machine like a mechanical heartbeat. But now, all I see are file folders stamped classified and a single freezer drawer where the vials lie untouched, forgotten. Beyond these sterile walls, clinics in rural Appalachia are buckling under the weight. Families sleeping on cots, nurses rationing IV drips, children gasping from a virus I already cracked. And every morning I wake with the same thought pressing into my ribs like a blade. They buried my research for the sake of a profit margin, while time keeps bleeding out. So I've made my choice. I'm going to dig that cure up. I'm going to set it free. Consequences be damned. My mother was a traveling nurse, working short-term rotations at reservation health centers. That summer, she had agreed to stay for 2 months at the White Mesa Community Clinic just outside Tuba City. I came along to keep her company, tagging behind her as she checked vital signs, wiped tears, and administered vaccines. I didn't fully understand why our family had left our small Minnesota town to travel so far south. I just knew this place was different. Dusty roads, trailer homes painted in bright yellows and reds, and people who lived with astonishing strength but without easy access to even the most basic medicines. One crisp morning, I followed her into a makeshift examination room with peeling paint and a single ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. A little girl, no older than 5, sat on the exam table in a faded t-shirt that hung from her like a curtain. Her skin burned with fever, and her tiny hand trembled as she held a cracked plastic cup of water. My mom knelt beside her, placed a cool hand on her forehead, and gently tilted her head back to offer a sip. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. I watched from the doorway, my chest tightening. Something stirred in me then, an ache, a confusion, a desperate desire to help, even though I had no idea how. Later that day, I asked why the clinic shelves looked so empty. My mother sighed and explained that the nearest full-service pharmacy was more than 50 miles away, and that funding for reservation health centers was often unreliable. "Sometimes," she said, "we run out of antibiotics, pain relievers, basic things. We place orders, but they can take weeks to arrive." At 10 years old, weeks felt like forever, especially when a child's life might hang in the balance. That afternoon, I wandered out back to a dusty courtyard where elders sat in lawn chairs beneath crooked shade trees, speaking in low voices. I remember hearing one grandmother say, "Biehosen, we have to wait. The system forgets us." I stood quietly nearby as the wind rattled the canvas of a nearby tent used for gatherings. A roadrunner darted between the rocks. The sky stretched wide and empty above the red mesas. That landscape, so vast, so quiet, felt fragile in a way I didn't yet have words for. A single vial of medicine could tip the balance between life and loss. Most afternoons that summer, I shadowed my mother in the clinic. She let me hold the stethoscope, count heartbeats, and help her clean the glass slides used for blood tests. She encouraged my questions even when I didn't quite know what I was asking. I was especially drawn to the black metal microscope that sat in the corner, quietly promising access to unseen worlds. One evening, she let me look through it. Cheek cells, stained pink and purple, came into focus, and I felt something click inside me. Wonder, awe, maybe even purpose. Maybe I could learn to solve problems I didn't yet know how to name. When we returned home that winter, the clinic and its people never left my thoughts. Sometimes I'd wake at night from a dream. Thin children shivering beneath threadbare blankets, no medicine in sight. I started checking out books from the town library, titles like Microbiology for Beginners and The Immune System. I'd sit under my reading lamp and trace diagrams of dividing bacteria, sketching cells as if understanding their shape could somehow tame them. I needed to know how something invisible could cause so much pain. By high school, I was volunteering at our local community clinic on weekends. The patients there came from all walks of life, but I never forgot the families I met in Arizona. The Navajo children, the mothers who held them with quiet strength, the nurses who rationed supplies with steady hands. I started a small fundraiser to collect medical goods, bandages, antiseptic wipes, thermometers. My classmates helped. We packed 2 suitcases and drove back to White Mesa the following summer. The clinic staff welcomed us like we'd brought water to a fire. Some of the supplies were gone in days. I watched nurses hand out relief, and I saw in a dozen small moments the meaning of impact. That was when I knew. It wasn't enough to send help. I had to be the one to create it. When I entered college, I chose biology, but it was virology that captured my imagination. The idea that a single discovery could stop an outbreak in its tracks, that one breakthrough could change the world. I still remember the envelope from the Midwestern Institute for Viral Research. I held it in my hands and thought of that little girl with the fever, the cracked plastic cup, the way my mother had whispered, "You're going to be okay," and I made myself a promise. I would dedicate my life to developing treatments for the communities most often overlooked. Looking back now, I see those early summers on the reservation for what they were, the seed of everything I now stand for. I learned that medicine is more than formulas and diagnostics. It's about people, their stories, their suffering, their strength. And when I finally held data showing that my compound could stop a deadly virus sweeping through rural Appalachia, I didn't think of spreadsheets or survival curves. I thought of that little girl in Arizona, and I remembered the vow. And here in this lab, with vials in front of me and a choice pressing down on my chest, that memory is the fire behind every decision I make. When I stepped onto the Midwestern Institute for Viral Research campus for the first time, I felt like I was walking into a dream I didn't yet know how to chase. The spring air was still crisp, and the sidewalks glinted with lingering frost despite the sun climbing higher each morning. My breath puffed out white as I carried my suitcase toward the modern brick and glass building that housed the virology department. I paused at the front doors, heart pounding, palms damp, wondering if I truly belonged among these towering corridors of knowledge. Inside, the halls were cool and smelled faintly of antiseptic and fresh coffee. Posters lined the walls, viral structures magnified 1,000 times, RNA strands swirling like tiny galaxies, and field teams in remote villages crouched beside makeshift benches beneath palm-thatched roofs. One photo showed researchers extracting samples from mosquito nets stained red. I felt a jolt, remembering those reservation clinic faces and thinking, that could be us, helping people before they lose hope. I arrived a first-year graduate student, wide-eyed and eager, carrying a degree in microbiology and a suitcase full of textbooks. My roommate May from Singapore spoke of CRISPR and reverse genetics. Like old friends, I clutched my notebook and followed her through a maze of white-painted hallways until we reached our lab suite. Fluorescent lights flooded the room, revealing benches lined with pipettes standing like sentinels, centrifuges humming low, and test tubes shimmering under sterile glare. At the far end stood my mentor, Dr. Elaine Huang, petite, sharp-eyed, her lab coat sleeves rolled to reveal virus life cycles tattooed down her arms. She looked up from her microscope and smiled, offering a firm handshake that felt grounding. "You must be Natalia. Welcome to the lab. We're glad to have you." Over the following weeks, I slipped into a rhythm that felt equal parts exhilarating and overwhelming. I woke before dawn, pulled on my white coat, and crossed the dew-drenched campus to swipe into the lab. I learned to prepare agar plates, calibrate micropipettes, and sterilize glassware with near religious care. Each bench bore a biohazard sticker and a personal set of goggles, gloves, and disposable masks. I quickly learned that even a dropped pipette tip could undo weeks of work. Dr. Huang coached me patiently. Pipette gently, no bubbles. Keep your samples at 4 degrees Celsius or risk degradation. She spoke with calm precision but expected excellence. Whenever I faltered, she would place a reassuring hand on my shoulder and say, "Mistakes happen. Just learn from them." By midsummer, I was part of her core research team, joining 2 postdocs and a few undergrads to focus on a novel viral strain emerging in rural Appalachian clinics. Reports describe patients arriving with high fevers, severe headaches, and viral pneumonia. Supplies were thin, tests unreliable, and clinics stretched to the brink. Dr. Huang believed a fast-acting therapeutic could slow the virus's spread while vaccines remained months away. Our biggest challenge was securing a reliable isolate. We worked with the CDC to receive de-identified samples from West Virginia, shipped in triple biohazard bags on dry ice. I watched Javier, one of our postdocs, carefully unzip each bag inside a biosafety cabinet, a shielded chamber breathing filtered air. Inside, he transferred the virus into nutrient medium, swirling gently to coax replication. My job was to monitor the infected cultures. Under the microscope, I watched healthy kidney cells flatten along the dish, only to round up and clump as the virus took hold. It was both mesmerizing and haunting to witness cells succumb to an invisible invader. I recorded everything in my journal: time, temperature, observations. Science, I realized, was equal parts meditation and urgency. Then came the drug screens. We tested a library of small molecules against the infected cells, mapping dose and effect. Some compounds showed toxicity. Others did nothing. Then, one day, just before sunset, I noticed something remarkable. In one well treated with a compound labeled JX19, the cells remained flat, green, and uninfected. I blinked, looked again. No red staining, no viral signatures. Dr. Huang rushed over. One look through the eyepiece and she said, breathless, "That's promising. We'll need to repeat it 3 more times, but if it holds, this could be our lead." Over the following days, we confirmed the result. JX19 suppressed viral replication without harming the host cells. I ran dilutions, plotted IC50 curves, and double-checked storage stability in mouse serum. One night, the data crystallized on the screen. JX19 was 10 times more potent than any previous compound. I stared at the numbers, heart pounding, barely able to breathe. Still, Dr. Huang cautioned me, "This is just the beginning. Bench data is only the first step. Real-world medicine takes much more." I nodded, but inside I felt something awaken: hope, responsibility, and a surge of purpose. I thought of those towns in Appalachia, Jellicoe, Welch, Shady Spring, where a single vial could mean the difference between life and death. As fall leaves burned red and gold outside our lab windows, I began drafting protocols for animal studies. My journal filled with notes, coat pockets bulged with pipette tips, and every moment hummed with quiet urgency. Looking back, I understand now. Those months didn't just shape my research, they shaped my resolve. Because sometimes the smallest discovery, a faint glow in a dish, can carry enough hope to illuminate an entire path forward. At 8 a.m., I logged into the virtual meeting from my small home office. Snow drifted outside the window, frosting the world in silence. But inside, the cold glow of the laptop felt more like judgment than light. Faces popped into view one by one, suits and serene smiles, names like David Shaw, CEO, Marissa Bergman, VP of R&D, Leonard Pierce, Strategy. Their polished backdrops, leather chairs, and spotless shelves made it clear they lived in a different world from the clinics we were trying to save. After brief introductions, I shared my screen. I began with images from the lab: green, glowing cell plates, survival curves, microscopy slides showing near complete viral suppression. I spoke calmly, confidently. JX-19 reduced viral load by 94% in murine lungs by day 5. 80% of treated mice survived past day 10. We observed no significant toxicity at therapeutic doses. Marissa nodded. Impressive results, Dr. Carter. But what about cost? This compound uses a rare intermediate that's 10 times the standard. I responded evenly. We're working on a new synthesis route. Early signs suggest we can cut that cost in half within a quarter. I've also identified a contract manufacturer ready to produce small-scale batches. With just $2 million, we could prepare for phase 1 trials. Then Leonard leaned in. $2 million for a virus limited to rural communities? There's no real return. Appalachia doesn't make markets. His words hit like ice water. I tried to push back. The health impact is immense. This isn't just about Appalachia, it's about proving the concept. JX-19 could be adapted for other viral families. Our early data suggests cross-reactivity. The potential's bigger than the outbreak we're facing. But Marissa's eyes narrowed. Potential isn't proof. If we pursue this, it's a gamble. Our model doesn't support that risk. She clicked to a slide. Sales projections, margin breakdowns. I felt my window closing. If we delay, I said quietly, more people will die. Rural lives matter, even if they don't fit your spreadsheets. There was a pause. David Shaw finally spoke. Dr. Carter, your dedication is admirable. But we don't move forward without viable returns. Effective immediately, the JX-19 project is shelved. His words didn't echo. They detonated. I closed my slide deck and stared into the screen as the call dissolved. Silence filled the room. My office felt smaller, tighter. I sat frozen, the weight of every experiment, every sleepless night, every hopeful mouse, collapsing all at once. I had followed the rules, played the game, given them data, and still they turned their backs. That afternoon, I walked into Dr. Huang's office, showed her the board's email. She read in silence. Her eyes clouded. They want it archived, she said finally. They're asking you to walk away. My voice cracked. They think rural lives aren't worth the cost. She didn't argue. She just looked at me long and steady. Then you have a choice. Stay silent and protect your career. Or fight and risk everything. That night, I sat in my home office staring at my lab notes. The thought of letting it all die felt unbearable. So I began to type. A message to a few trusted colleagues. A plan, quiet, careful, illegal. I would repackage the compound, ship it out through back channels, distribute it to the clinic still waiting for help. As I hovered over send, I thought of every patient I had ever seen, every nurse I had ever met, every child I couldn't save. I clicked, and as the message vanished into cyberspace, I whispered into the silence. They can bury the research, but they can't bury the truth, or the hope it holds. We moved fast. I scrubbed the compound's name from lab notes and relabeled vials under generic protein assay codes. We rerouted small shipments through academic research partnerships, disguising doses as molecular biology samples. A friend in procurement helped reassign our reagents to an unrelated viral assay. Every step felt like walking a wire above a canyon. One mistake, and it was over. But the desperation of the clinics gave us fuel. I heard from a physician in Logan County who said they were down to their last ventilator. A nurse in Floyd told me she held a child in her arms while the parents prayed out loud for something, anything that could help. I wrote back, "Hold on, it's coming." The first batch went out in unmarked cryo boxes, labeled biospecimens. Overnighted to 2 clinics under aliases. I knew it was reckless. I knew it was illegal, but I also knew what I had seen under the microscope, and what I had seen in the faces of those forgotten by policy and price. When the first patient recovered, fever breaking, lungs clearing within 48 hours, I sat down on my apartment floor and cried. alone, silent, terrified, and alive with something bigger than fear, conviction. But shadows grew fast. By week 3, I noticed strange activity in our lab network, extra login attempts on the secure server, restricted files flagged for audit. Dr. Huang called me into her office, voice low. "Compliance is sniffing around," she warned. "I didn't ask questions, but whatever you're doing, be careful. They're not just looking for mistakes, they're looking for someone to blame." I started using burner phones. I backed up the raw data onto encrypted drives and kept one hidden in a hollowed-out textbook. At night, I read federal code on unauthorized clinical distribution, FDA statutes, whistleblower protection, anything that could help me understand what line I had crossed and what waited on the other side. May urged me to pull back. Javier offered to take the fall if things went bad. But I couldn't ask them to burn for a fire I started. Then came the moment I'd feared. A subpoena landed in my inbox. The university wanted access to my experiment logs, shipment records, all data relating to compound JX-19. I met with Dr. Huang behind closed doors. She looked tired, pale. "If they trace this to you, Natalia, you could lose everything, your degree, your license, your future." I stared at her, the silence between us louder than anything either of us could say. "What about the people who are still alive because of it?" I asked. "Don't they count for something?" She didn't answer. Not directly. But the next morning, a key card to the cold room arrived in my mailbox. Hers. No note, no explanation, just quiet solidarity. The investigation closed in fast. My apartment was searched, my laptop seized, but by then, the real work had already escaped. The final batch of JX-19 was already in transit to a clinic deep in eastern Kentucky where an outbreak had spiked overnight. I had nothing left to hide, nothing left to protect but the choice I'd already made. When the media caught wind of it, graduate student leaks unauthorized treatment to rural clinics, the world split. Some called me a traitor, others a hero. I didn't care. I only cared that the people I set out to help were still breathing. That JX-19 was no longer a shelved idea, but a living remedy, quietly saving lives even if it cost me my own. Now, as I stand at the edge of whatever's coming, disciplinary hearings, legal trials, maybe worse, I hold fast to the only truth that matters. I kept my promise. The little girl on the reservation, the child in the Kentucky hospital bed, the mother in Logan County who emailed me last night to say, "My son is finally smiling again." They were worth it, and if I had to choose again, I'd do it all the same, because science is not just data and deadlines, it's duty. And sometimes doing what's right means breaking the rules that were never written for the people who need help most. I was half asleep when my phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m., the red digits of the bedside clock glowing like embers in the dark. My heart jolted. I fumbled for the screen, Dr. Jamar Reed, McDowell County Health Clinic. My stomach tightened. He was part of my original contact network, the kind of person who only called when everything was breaking. I answered on the second ring. "Jamar," I croaked. "Nat, you there?" His voice cracked. Exhaustion, fear. I swung my legs over the bed, walked barefoot across cold floorboards, and clicked on a lamp. Light spilled over half-sorted protocol drafts, grant notes, and a stale cup of coffee. "It's awful, Nat," he said. "Patients at Franks Creek Clinic are dying faster than we can admit them. ER's full. We've got tents outside, people on stretchers in the parking lot. Oxygen's running out. Case counts doubling every 2 days." My mind reeled. Franks Creek, barely equipped in good times, was never built for this. "What are you seeing?" I asked. "They're down to 6 bottles of IV fluids, bleaching the walls with industrial disinfectant. It's burning patients. People can't breathe. I saw a kid collapse on the clinic steps, case 47. By morning, he was gone." I pressed my hand against my forehead. "How many cases?" "Over 200 confirmed. Maybe 30 more suspected. Testing's failing. Labs won't take samples. We're buried. I could almost smell it, disinfectant mixed with diesel, the sterile panic of crisis. Are they still accepting supplies? We're scraping together oxygen tanks. PPE's gone. We begged the state. They gave us paperwork. Then came the ask. Nat, we need the compound. I closed my eyes. JX-19, safe in the lab's freezer, locked behind layers of approval, classified, forgotten. It's not approved, I told him. Are you ready to use something we haven't cleared? There's no choice, he said. We'll risk it. I reached for a notepad. I'll make a crude batch, enough for 10. I'll purify by hand and drive to Stakeville, Kentucky. You'll need to find someone to meet me. Jamar exhaled. I'll call Angie, a retired EMT in Welch. Lost her brother last month. She'll drive. I'll also send dosing protocols, I said. Start at 5 milligrams per kilogram. Diluted in saline, slow infusion. Monitor liver enzymes, ALT, AST. Stop if there's pain, jaundice, or changes in vitals. Understood, he said. By the time we ended the call, the sky outside had begun to pale. I dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, pulled my hair back, and brewed a cup of bitter coffee that cut straight through the haze. By 3:30 a.m., I was swiping into the lab. Dark halls, cold metal. My bench was quiet, sacred. I opened the freezer, retrieved the backup vials. With sterile syringes, I drew out precise volumes one by one, labeling them JC-001 through JC-010-20 milligrams per milliliter each. Then came the dry ice, the lead-lined cooler, the cautious sealing of hope into a box the world didn't yet deserve. These 10 vials weren't much, but they were something. My phone buzzed. Dr. Huang, you'll get caught. Be careful. Call me if you need anything. My hands didn't tremble. I wrote dosing notes by hand, checked every label again, and zipped the cooler shut. By 4:15 a.m., I was slipping out the side door of the lab. Hood up, cold air stinging my cheeks. I drove the rental SUV through near-empty streets, heater blasting on the passenger seat to protect the samples. The farther I got from campus, the clearer my thoughts became. I was no longer following protocol, I was answering a calling. I crossed into Kentucky just before 5 a.m. Jamar's words echoed, people dying on stretchers, the generator sputtering. I imagined Angie waiting at a gas station off E75, coffee in hand, truck idling. She'd take the cooler and drive east into the shadows of the Appalachian Hills. Near Ashland, I switched the radio on. A voice crackled from a local station. Franks Creek's high school gym is now an overflow ward. 3 oxygen tanks left. Power could fail by morning. The Red Cross sent food. But food doesn't help if you can't breathe. I switched it off, let silence fill the car. At 5:30 a.m., I spotted Angie's truck under a flickering streetlight. She waved me over. Her eyes were red but steady. She took the cooler from my hands without a word. I mouthed, "Go." And she did. I texted Jamar, "Courier en route, ETA to Teotihuacan, prep infusion." As the sun rose over the highway, the weight returned. I could face dismissal, lawsuits, the end of my research career, but I had moved. I had acted. And somewhere in the hollows of West Virginia, science was finally on its way, not as a paper, not as a press release, but as a lifeline. By 8 a.m., I was back on campus. I slipped the empty cooler into the freezer. Dr. Huang found me at my bench. Her eyes searched mine. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said. "It's done." She nodded. "Now we wait." Outside the lab window, students passed by, unaware of what we'd just done. I stared out toward the horizon, imagining that cooler winding through back roads, past coal towns and frost-covered porches. In that moment, I made myself a promise. No matter what consequences followed, I would stand by this act. Because in Appalachia, someone would breathe easier tonight, and if that was the cost of defiance, I would pay it again and again. In the quiet hours that followed the shipment of those first 10 vials of JX-19 to Appalachia, I found myself face to face with a silence that didn't comfort, it confronted. The university campus returned to its usual rhythm. Students crossing the walkways with coffee in hand, professors preparing for morning lectures, the lab humming softly like an old machine refusing to rest. But inside me, the silence was different. It pulsed, echoed, and asked questions I couldn't ignore. My decision was made, and the compound was already en route to McDowell County, to a clinic barely holding on, where 10 vials might mean 10 breaths, 10 chances, maybe even 10 lives. But I knew that 10 wouldn't be enough, not by a long shot. If JX-19 was going to make a difference, I had to scale up, and fast. That meant breaking from the approved path while pretending to walk it. I'd have to build something secret, something fragile and fast, hidden behind a front of compliance. I sat at my desk, sunlight streaking through the blinds like prison bars across my scattered notes. IRB documents I had carefully doctored, old grant proposals masquerading as cover, lists of names I trusted with my life. Jamar in West Virginia, Angie in Kentucky, a few university colleagues who still believed in more than policy. Every name was a gamble, but also a lifeline. Then came the email, cold, blunt, and faceless. Dr. Carter, please be reminded that all research activities involving JX-19 must cease immediately. Failure to comply will result in disciplinary action. My chest tightened as I read it. No name, just the shadow of a bureaucratic machine bearing down. I folded it, slid it into a file marked Archived Correspondence for Record, a label designed to lie. On paper, I was documenting compliance. In reality, I was documenting resistance. That morning, I wrote in my lab journal with the kind of precision that only guilt or defiance can sharpen. Prepared 10 vials of JX-19, 20 milligrams per milliliter, for field deployment to McDowell County Health Clinic via authorized courier. No mention of the altered shipping manifest, the cooler mislabeled to avoid scrutiny, the courier whose ID would vanish from the system the moment delivery was confirmed. I filed the entry under Project Suspension JX-19, another lie wrapped in careful documentation. By mid-morning, I found Mei Lu at her station, my roommate, my fellow postdoc, and my quietest source of courage. She looked up from her work and saw everything in my face before I could speak. "How's the shipment?" she asked. I nodded. "Delivered, but we need more." Her eyes darkened. "Natalia, are you sure about this? We could lose everything." I handed her the envelope anyway. Inside, a handwritten protocol, steps for covert synthesis, supply alternatives, aliases for materials we could no longer order under our names. Her gloved hand closed around it. "I'm in," she said. No hesitation, just resolve. And with that we began. Next came Rosa Martinez, our lab manager, the woman who could disappear a shipment in the bureaucracy and resurrect it in a freezer under a different name. I showed her data, not words. Graphs, survival curves, lung viral loads that whispered hope in every line. She nodded, slow but certain. "Tell me what to write," she said. I told her, and she did. Inventory logs disguised in old study names, chemicals buried in harmless-looking requests. Every lie designed not to deceive, but to protect. With May sourcing materials and Rosa rewriting the truth, we built our network, one conversation, one encrypted message at a time. Dr. Marcus Howe agreed to allocate incubator space, late-night synthesis, no entries in the logs, keycard swaps, small batches hidden behind layers of benign terminology. Every step forward came wrapped in danger. But I kept walking. Nights bled into mornings. We purified, we labeled, we documented just enough to hide in plain sight. Vials marked rabbit hemorrhagic fever virus. Assay control number 3 sat in cold storage, harboring something far more urgent. We worked under red emergency lights and fluorescent whispers, our movements choreographed to avoid surveillance. Rosa checked the halls. May ran purity tests. I logged results that didn't exist. Sometimes, in the stillness of those nights, I caught my reflection in the lab glass, eyes sunken, expression hollow, hands moving with mechanical resolve. I whispered to myself, "What have you become?" But I never felt regret, because I could still see their faces, the patients waiting in Appalachian clinics, the nurses begging for options, the children whose names I would never know. And I knew then, as I know now, that saving lives will never be clean work. It will never be tidy or safe or comfortable. By Thursday, we had enough JX19 for 50 more patients, hidden behind lies we told with careful love. Our database read RHFV control inventory, but what we really held was a quiet rebellion, one vial at a time. On Friday, I packed my bag. 5 new vials, new dosing protocols, a note for Rosa with barely a word. ICU, Friday a.m., call when you're there. At 4:30 a.m., I stepped out into the dawn. The sky was lavender, the air cold, the campus still. My legs ached, my breath steamed in the morning air, but my mind was clear. I wasn't just walking to my car, I was walking deeper into the fight. Because somewhere, a nurse was waiting. A clinic refrigerator was humming quietly with space set aside. A child was coughing in their sleep, lungs struggling against something we might just be able to hold back. And that was all the reason I needed. I gripped the wheel, took a breath, and whispered aloud to no one and everyone, "Keep going. They're counting on us." I sit alone in the dimly lit graduate lounge, the clock beside me reading 8:45 p.m. A single fluorescent bulb flickers overhead, casting long shadows across my laptop screen. The IRB progress report template stares back at me. Sterile fields labeled project status, enrollment numbers, adverse events. Tonight, those fields become my shield. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I begin to type. Project title, Evaluation of JX19 Compound Efficacy in Viral Suppression, Phase 1 Preclinical. ERB approval, number HSR 2024-11234. Current status, extended data collection. Rationale for extension, additional assays required for characterization of compounds' pharmacokinetics in murine models. No human subjects involved. Summary of activities. Since last report, completed murine survival studies. Ongoing biochemical assays to determine binding kinetics. Preliminary metabolic stability testing in humanized liver microsomes. Planning for future toxicology studies. Anticipated timeline. Continue assays through December 2024. Results to be compiled for publication submission in January 2025. Each sentence feels hollow yet necessary. I save the document as IRB_JX19_progress_December 2024.xc.x and close my laptop. In this official record, there is no hint that JX19 vials will soon be racing down dirt roads toward Appalachian clinics. It's 9:15 p.m. now. I slip into the lab, my sanctuary that has become a covert command center. A single desk lamp burns softly, illuminating empty pipette racks and counters wiped clean. The hum of the biosafety cabinet's HEPA filter is the only other sound. I reach into my backpack and pull out 5 amber vials, JC026 through JC0210. Each vial is labeled Lab Control Number 3, Rabbit Hemorrhagic Fever Virus Assay, the fake identity that will keep anyone from questioning what's inside. My pulse quickens as I remove the masking tape and replace it with freshly printed labels, each one marking a life waiting in silence. I place the vials into a lead-lined cooler I modified from an old picnic hamper, insulated, lined with dry ice. Every hiss of cold air feels like a heartbeat, reminding me how fragile time is for those on the other end of this mission. My phone buzzes, a message from Dr. Malhotra. Ready to prep dilution kits? He's my pharmacologist ally waiting in the pharmacy on the East Wing. I tuck the cooler under my arm and walk down a deserted hallway, double-checking that no security cameras are watching me. Inside the pharmacy, Raj stands beneath harsh halogen lights, pipetting liquid into infusion bags. He looks up when I enter, eyes widening slightly at the sight of dry ice vapor curling around my feet. I hand him the cooler without a word. He unwraps each vial, gives a quick visual check, and turns to the back bench to begin preparing sterile saline and infusion filters, each bag labeled pharma-grade media controls. 20 vials needed by Thursday, I tell him, voice low. 10 for Wise County, 10 for Jellicoe. Make sure purity stays above 95%. If any batch dips below that, it's useless. Raj nods, slipping on gloves, already shifting into clinical precision. My next stop is the basement offices, Angie Thompson's domain. She's a retired paramedic with a memory for every back road in Kentucky and West Virginia. At 10:30 p.m., I knock on the door marked Logistics and Field Coordination. She opens it slowly. The room smells of stale coffee and old printer paper. Her desk is a chaos of files, maps, and highlighters, with a battered topographical chart of the region taped across one wall. I need 2 more vans, I say, placing the cooler on her table. Angie studies me for a long moment, then motions me forward. Wise County and Jellicoe, she mutters, tapping the map. They're overwhelmed. We'll need at least 20 doses for each. She drags her pen across the map. Route A cuts through East 75 south into Kentucky, then crosses State Route 160 into Wise County. Not many checkpoints along that way. For Jellicoe, take the old Coal Hall Road off US 25 West. Dirt path, but it skips every patrol post. I nod slowly, picturing the narrow curves, the frozen creeks, the headlights crawling through dark hollows toward exhausted families. If a truck breaks down, how do we keep the vials cold, I ask. She taps a red dot on the map. Backup stash at Clinch River Community Center. Industrial freezer, never logged. If you lose the cooler, phone me. We'll stash them on dry ice under the engine shield. You'll get maybe 8 hours. By 11 p.m., I'm back in the hallway, slipping past flickering lights. I check my badge, still covered by a fake lab maintenance sticker, then head down into the lab's sub-basement. May is waiting, framed under the dull glow of a single bulb. She's already run the purity tests. 96.5%, she says, pointing to the HPLC chromatogram. Perfect peak at 7.42 minutes, masked as part of a hexafluorocyclopentane control. Grab vials 031 through 040, I whisper. Label the bottom row as QCCPX3. Use Emily's method so nothing pings the logs. Rosa will file them under RHFV controls in the sub-basement freezer. We're adding 50 doses to the stockpile tonight. May nods, moving efficiently. She's done this enough to know every step. Rosa slips in quietly, like always, and begins replacing the old labels with new ones. Rabbit hemorrhagic fever virus assay. She updates the Excel inventory, same sheet, same lie, file titled RHFV Control Inventory. Production date, December 18th, 2024. Location, sub-basement freezer bin 4. It's all there, just not what it seems. At midnight, I take out my phone and send a final encrypted message. Covert operation, JX-19, field deployment. Status, protocol drafted, 50 vials prepared, couriers assigned. Timeline, Franks Creek tonight at 8 p.m., Wise County Thursday, Jellicoe Friday. I tap send. The lock icon flashes. Our lifeline pulses forward. I close the biosafety cabinet, switch off the UV lamp, and let the stillness settle. The lab falls into its usual rhythm, centrifuges humming, refrigerators exhaling low and steady. I pack my backpack, now empty, except for a single emergency vial, JC041, hidden in a false pocket, just in case. As I step into the corridor, I pass flickering security cameras. Their lenses catch my reflection, distorted like someone I used to be. The campus is sleeping, students curled in dorms, professors home in bed. I walk across to Building B, open the computer terminal, and attach the forged IRB report. I hover over send, then click. The official version of the truth is now complete. Outside, the sky is still dark, the wind sharp against my coat. I walk slowly toward my office. No lectures, no assignments, just 50 vials hidden behind codes and cold steel. Just a mission cloaked in lies. As I sit at my desk, the first brush of dawn paints the horizon. I rest my eyes on the slow bloom of light and whisper. For every vial we hide, a life stands a chance. Because the day ahead will demand more secrecy, more coordination, more courage. But in these quiet hours before the world wakes, I feel steady. We've chosen this path not because it is safe, but because the alternative, letting entire communities die unnoticed, is simply unthinkable. I drive down a winding back road toward McDowell County just after midnight. The sky is ink black, dotted with pinpricks of stars, and the van's headlights stretch into the night like cautious fingers. Nothing but dense forest and gravel shoulders flank me on either side. My hands grip the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale beneath my gloves. In the passenger seat rests a cooler, its label reading University Pathology Specimens. But inside, nestled in dry ice, are amber vials of JX-19, each one a fragile thread of hope for families caught in the grip of an outbreak no one wants to name out loud. As I approach the county line, a sudden flicker of red and blue flashes ahead. My heart lurches. I ease off the road, killing the engine and letting the headlights die with it. The forest closes in around me. The scent of pine drifts through the open window, sharp, earthy, unbothered by the fear pulsing in my chest. A sheriff's cruiser pulls in behind me. Its headlights sweep across the back of my van. The vehicle idles just a few feet away, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Then a door creaks open, and a tall, broad-shouldered figure emerges, belt heavy with a holstered weapon, flashlight in hand. He walks up slowly, beam slicing through the cab, finally landing on my face. "Evenin', ma'am," he says, voice low and even. "You aware this road's closed after 11? His gaze slides to the cooler beside me. "What you got back here?" I muster a calm smile. "Just medical supplies," I answer. "We're delivering them to the clinic in Welch. University samples, pathology specimens for urgent research." My voice sounds steadier than I feel. He raises a skeptical brow. "Pathology specimens, huh? Let's see your paperwork." He extends a clipboard, ready for a signature. My stomach knots. I have no official transport clearance for this route, but I nod like I expected the question. Slowly, I reach into the glove compartment and pull out a manila envelope labeled Specimen Transport Forms. Inside are the forged documents I spent hours preparing, a shipping manifest, an IRB addendum, and a letter stamped with university letterhead. High priority pathology samples, Dr. Marcus Howe. The sheriff takes them, scans the first page, and lets the flashlight trace the text. He says nothing, just watches me. I force myself to breathe. "Project Howe," he mutters eventually. "Rabbit viruses or something like that?" His eyes flick back to the cooler. "You heading up Route 52, right? Most late-night samples go through the hospital." "Hospital's at capacity," I reply evenly. "Frank's Creek Clinic asked for direct delivery. Less red tape." I meet his gaze, holding on to the lie with everything I have. He scribbles in his patrol log. "GPS says you veered off Route 52 about 2 miles back. County ordinance requires all commercial medical transport to stick to it. Why take this back road?" My mind spins. "Landslide," I say. "Wasn't from around here. The GPS rerouted me near the old mining tunnel. This seemed faster." It's a half-truth. Storms did wash out parts of Route 52 last week. I hope he's heard the same. He considers it for a beat longer, then taps something on his screen. "Fine. Keep it under 65 and stay on Route 52 from here out. Don't let me catch you back here again." He offers a stiff nod and walks back to his cruiser. "Thank you, officer," I say, the words catching slightly as they leave my mouth. The lights vanish. I sit in darkness again, the only sound my breath fogging up the windshield. I rest my forehead against the steering wheel for a long moment before turning the key. The engine hums to life. I ease back onto the road, shaken but still moving. The van hugs the curves of the road as I head deeper into the hills. The headlights are dimmed now, the radio off. I don't want to draw attention. No static, no music, just the hum of the motor and the soft hiss of the tires against cold asphalt. Each mile takes me further from regulation and closer to the lives depending on what I carry. By dawn, the ridgelines begin to glow with faint gold. I pull into the outskirts of Welch. The McDowell County Health Center is a modest brick building nestled among tall grass and gravel. Its metal sign is faded, rust streaked at the edges. Tents have been pitched across the lawn, a spillover from the full wards inside. Nurses move quietly through the early light, carrying IV bags, blankets, hope. I roll into a gravel patch marked emergency supplies only, then kill the engine. Exhaust drifts upward like a ghost. My legs are stiff as I step from the van. My boots crunch with each step toward the rear cargo doors. There, waiting for me, are Nurse Thompson and a tall EMT named Tyler. Both look exhausted, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, shoulders tight with worry. But they manage faint smiles when they see the cooler. "You made it," Tyler says. "We were running low. Folks, they're scared. Never heard of JX-19, and some won't even take Tylenol anymore." He gestures to the tents where families wait, hunched together under blankets, eyes fixed on us. I nod. It's unapproved, I admit, but it worked in animal models. We'll go slow, start with 1 vial per patient. Careful monitoring. Tyler rattles off priorities: children under 10, then elders, then anyone struggling to breathe. He unlatches the van doors. I lift the cooler carefully and crack it open. Cold air spills out. Vial after vial is transferred into their hands, each labeled, each accounted for. Despite the chill, sweat beads along my brow. As we finish, a man steps out of one of the tents, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn flannel and a cap pulled low. Mr. Brooks. I recognize him from photos Jamar sent. His wife died last week. He eyes the vials warily. "That stuff safe?" he asks, voice sanded down by grief and suspicion. "Last time I tried something untested, I wound up in worse shape." I crouch slightly to meet his eye. "I understand. We ran extensive tests on this, lab models, animal trials, multiple batches. We saw survival in infected mice. You'll be monitored closely. I'll show you the data myself." I reach into my coat and pull a laminated card. Simple instructions. Administer 5 milligrams per kilogram over 30 minutes. Monitor for reactions. Check liver enzymes at 12 and 24 hours. I place it in his hands. He stares at the card, then at the vials, then at me. I can see the fight in his eyes, the battle between fear and hope. He looks over his shoulder at the tent where his grandkids are curled beneath a space heater. "All right," he says, not with confidence, but with resolve. "I'll give it a shot. Can't do worse than watching them fade." He takes a cooler from the nurse and walks back toward the tent, and in that moment, a little light returns to the field. Hope flickering through cold morning air. But my relief is short-lived. I know I'm not out of danger. The sheriff could report the checkpoint. The state could trace my vehicle. Every vial I handed over could be seized, could be used against me. Each one carries not just medicine, but risk. Risk of arrest, of being blacklisted, of losing everything I've built. Still, my resolve holds. I slide into the driver's seat. The dashboard clock reads 6:15 a.m. My phone buzzes. A message from Jamar. "Thompson reports 2 patients improved overnight. Keep them coming." I close my eyes, letting the words settle over me like a blessing. Then I turn the key and begin the drive back. There will be more patrols, more resistance, more nights like this. But as I wind through the forest once more, the sunrise cresting over the mountains paints the sky in soft gold. I glance toward the empty passenger seat where the cooler once sat and allow myself the smallest of smiles. Because for now, someone in a clinic bed is breathing easier. Because this time, science outran silence. And because every mile I travel is one more chance to tip the scales toward mercy. I wake before dawn, restless, uneasy. It's the kind of stillness that doesn't ask questions but compels movement. So I drive. Out to Clinch River, a small town just a mile downstream from Frank's Creek Clinic. The road is quiet, and when I arrive, the sun is just beginning to rise, spilling gold over cracked sidewalks like a promise. Only a week ago, this place looked abandoned. Boarded windows, shuttered shops, closed indefinitely scrawled across grocery doors. The school had become a ward. Children were learning survival, not science. Education replaced with triage. But now, something is different. As I pull into the gravel lot, I hear laughter. And not the hesitant kind, but real, full-bodied laughter, echoing in the crisp morning air. Kids with bouncing backpacks make their way toward the old, red brick schoolhouse while parents wave goodbye. Sunlight glistens off dew-laced grass, and for the first time in weeks, the town feels like it's waking up from a bad dream. I step out of the van, heart pounding with disbelief, and something else I haven't allowed myself to feel in a while. Relief. Through the window of Miller's general store, I see shelves filling again, apples, potatoes, lettuce with life still in it. Behind the counter, Mr. Miller, his hands steady despite the years, rings up canned goods for a miner in dusty coveralls, who tips his cap before heading outside to stack crates of tomatoes on a folding table. Nearby, 2 farmers are bartering, eggs for jars of preserves. A soft cluck from the coop, the low hum of an engine somewhere in the distance. It all feels like something sacred is returning. I stroll slowly down the main road, breathing in the scent of fresh-cut hay and damp soil. A group of boys stands outside Johnson's cafe, trading pencils like they're gold bars. One boy raises a sharpened number 2 and says, grinning, "Best trade I've made all day." I can't help but smile. Beneath the oak trees, families sit at picnic tables eating biscuits and gravy donated by the church. A handmade banner strung between 2 posts reads, "Welcome back, Clinch River students." And Mrs. Caldwell, the 3rd grade teacher, stands at the entrance, greeting students like she's been waiting her whole life for this moment. "Good morning, Eli. Your fever's down?" she asks gently. He nods. "Yes, ma'am." "I feel good." His little sister clings to her side, cheeks bright with shy joy. Mrs. Caldwell sees me and smiles. Thanks to Dr. Carter's medicine, we're back on our feet. My throat tightens. This is why I did it. Why I buried myself in protocols and shipments. Why I slipped unapproved vials under rabbit virus labels and sent them down gravel roads. These kids owe me nothing, but I owe them everything. I continue toward Harlan's diner, where the old neon sign flickers stubbornly to life. A young woman wipes grease off the griddle, spots me through the window, and waves. "Morning, Dr. Carter," she calls. Inside, I take a seat at the counter. A plate of eggs and sausage is set down in front of me. The smell of smoke and salt hits hard. The cook, wearing an apron stained with the work of the morning, wipes his brow and says, "We're giving free breakfast to patients and their families. Nobody has to pay." His voice catches. We nearly lost it all, but now it feels like home again. I glance up at the chalkboard. Grand reopening today. Bakery, barbershop, feed store, tech repair. Across the street, a teenager carefully trims his neighbor's bangs. No training, just patience and a pair of scissors. I leave a donation folded in worn bills, and the owner squeezes my hand like it's a thank you, too big for words. Outside, the light has changed again, brighter now. A crowd gathers by the community center. On a makeshift stage, a local pastor delivers a sermon on perseverance and unity. His voice, worn but steady, drifts over the lawn. Kids clap along to a bluegrass tune played through a battered speaker. I sit cross-legged on the grass, surrounded by elders sipping cider from mismatched mugs. One woman leans close and whispers, "Never thought I'd see the day. Not until Dr. Carter came round with that medicine." Her voice is like a prayer carried on the wind. Everywhere I look, the signs of healing are undeniable. A farmer trades eggs for a bundle of clothes. A mechanic checks the oil in a volunteer's van before it heads out to another hollow. Children giggle. Old men shake hands. This isn't just recovery, it's renewal. And yet, beneath the warmth, something colder stirs. Doubt creeps in, quiet and sharp. I still see the forged documents, the sheriff's flashlight sweeping across fake pathology labels, the moment each vial left my hand and entered the unknown. Was it right? Was it justified? Driving back to the university, the fields blur past. Corn, tobacco, soy stretching under a perfect summer sky. And inside me, a storm builds. Guilt and pride twist together, indistinguishable. Back in the lab, I scrub my hands until the skin burns. The biosafety cabinet hums softly, waiting, but the scent that once promised discovery now smells of defiance. I open my journal and write one line. If the law chooses profit over people, is disobedience the truest form of compassion? The ink soaks deep into the paper, bleeding like truth that can no longer be contained. I flip through older entries, trials at the reservation clinic, preliminary tests, late-night emails, the first smuggled doses. And it hits me. This story isn't just mine. It never was. It belongs to everyone who stood in the gap while the system looked the other way. I close the journal. Outside, the sun stretches its last light across empty benches, waiting for tomorrow's students. And in that glow, I feel something shift, something fragile, but real. Hope. Tomorrow, I'll do it again. I'll break rules. I'll falsify protocols. I'll pray each vial makes it where it's needed most, because somewhere out there, families are still waiting, forgotten by the institutions meant to protect them. The moral of this journey was never comfort or safety. It is this: when compassion demands we break the rules, then we must break them without hesitation. Let laws bend, let systems stretch, until the day comes when medicine no longer answers to profit, but to people. Tonight, I hold on to laughter. I hold on to music. I hold on to life, however it returns. And when the world asks why, we will answer. Not with arguments, but with the undeniable truth of what we helped rebuild from the ashes. I'm sitting at my desk when the email arrives. The subject line alone makes my stomach drop. Notice of internal investigation. JX-19 research activities. My hands begin to tremble as I click it open. The first sentence hits like a cold wave. Effective immediately, all research and distribution of JX-19 are under formal review by the university compliance and legal departments. Below that, a list of accusations unfolds: unauthorized human dosing, falsified IRB documents, misappropriation of lab materials. It's as if the floor has been pulled from beneath me. Then the phone rings. It's Marissa Bergman, MidBioPharma's VP of R&D. Her voice, composed and clinical, slices through the silence. "Dr. Carter, I trust you received our notice. We'll be convening a board meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. to review your actions. I hope you're prepared to face the consequences of jeopardizing corporate assets for a non-approved compound." I want to respond, to explain that war doesn't wait for approval. But her final words echo louder than anything I could say: jeopardizing corporate assets. It sounds less like a reprimand and more like a sentence. After the call, I sit motionless. My heart is pounding so hard it feels like the whole building can hear it. One side of me urges retreat, delete the records, admit to an oversight, accept a quiet settlement, and preserve what's left of a career. But another voice, quieter, older, and harder to ignore, reminds me: your conscience wasn't built for compliance. It was built to carry lives. I close my eyes and see them all, Mr. Brooks, once too weak to stand, now feeding his hens at sunrise. The children of Clinch River racing across the schoolyard, grandmothers laughing softly as they hand out warm biscuits under a painted banner, and that memory outshines any fear. That night, I type a resignation letter, short, careful, calculated. I admit to acting without authorization in the interest of expedience. I save it as drc_resignation.xcx. My finger lingers over the send button, but something holds me back. I think of those remote towns where mortality rates have dropped to nearly zero. Communities breathing again. If I resign quietly, if I retreat into silence, their stories will be buried behind legal red tape. So I don't send it. Instead, I open a draft I wrote weeks ago and never had the courage to share. I, Dr. Natalia Carter, knowingly bypassed institutional and corporate protocols to deliver JX-19 to under-resourced communities in Appalachia. I did so because I believed in the moral imperative to save lives above all else. To those I've harmed, I apologize. To those I've helped, I remain steadfast. I will face any legal or professional consequences necessary to ensure that compassion triumphs over profit. I copy the words into an email, address it to a national news contact I identified long ago, and this time, I hit send. By morning, my inbox is overflowing. Journalists, producers, interview requests. My phone lights up with texts and alerts. Amid the noise, I feel something unexpected, calm. At 10 a.m. sharp, I log into the board's video conference. Their faces appear, framed in glass offices, every expression trained to be unreadable. Marissa begins with a practiced tone. Dr. Carter, your open letter has caused a public uproar. We view this as a gross violation of trust. How do you justify your actions? I breathe in, slowly. I did what I believed was right, I say. While corporate discussions stalled, families were dying. JX-19 worked. Clinics in West Virginia reported an 80% drop in mortality. Every life saved justified the risk. I can feel their silence harden, the kind that means the verdict is already decided. If the law chooses profit over people, I ask, then is disobedience the truest form of compassion? I let the words settle. Then, quietly, I mute my mic and leave the call. By afternoon, the images begin to roll across national television. Children walking out of newly reopened schools, elders hugging nurses, families gathering in markets filled with produce and hope. Vials of JX-19, once a symbol of legal risk, now carried like lifelines by those who've seen the worst and survived it. But alongside these scenes, the networks show another narrative. Panelists in suits debating unauthorized trials, scrolling graphics of potential lawsuits, projected fines. A split screen. Life returning to a forgotten community, and lawyers parsing compliance in windowless rooms. That evening, I return to the lab. I swipe my badge one final time. The corridor is quiet, sterile. Inside, everything is gone. Equipment boxed, samples removed, every vial labeled and locked away for audit. A bright orange sticker marks the biosafety cabinet, out of service, pending review. I stand at the workbench, press my palm to the cool stainless steel, and close my eyes. And the memories come, soft but insistent. Nurse Thompson's voice calling updates over the clinic speaker. Children giggling through recovery. Warm cider passed hand to hand under fading fall leaves. 1,000 small rebellions stitched together into something larger, something true. I open my eyes and speak, though no one is there to hear. History will judge me, but a saved life forgives 1,000 indictments. I turn toward the door, and as it clicks shut behind me, the only thing I carry is conviction. Not regret, not doubt, but the unshakable belief that compassion, real, urgent, unapproved compassion, is always worth the risk.